Welcome back to Pop Tabs. Keep tabs on all your pop culture news. I'm your host, Matthew Yapp, and joining me today is...
Hunter Weiss.
And...
Keaney.
So this week, I just wanted to make myself look real bad, so I got two actual hot people on. It works. Oh, gosh. So, you know what's not hot? Nazis. So, if you didn't know, there is a man by the name of Meechan, and he was arrested for a video he created for his YouTube channel in which he trained his girlfriend's dog to be what he described as the least adorable thing he could think of because his girlfriend liked the dog too much, a Nazi. You can see how that's odd. He trained the dog to do various things like hail Hitler. When he pulled up videos, the dog would like extend its paw. I'm not gonna hail Hitler. He would train the dog to get really excited when he said various Nazi phrases, like gas the Jews, things like that. A lot of really weird stuff. He saw this as satire. However, he lives in Scotland where free speech laws are a little different, and they saw it as hate speech. So he was arrested, and it came out very recently that he has been convicted guilty for committing a hate crime because of what he said in the video. Now, right off the bat, do you guys think that this is offensive?
I'm going to start off with, yes, it is offensive, but going off of the laws that we have here in the U.S.,
right,
where hate speech, even though it's disdainful, I mean, it's not illegal. So, I mean, in my opinion, when I was reading about it, he didn't seem to be trying to mass mediate it. Like, it was just kind of a joke that he played on his girlfriend. So, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, speaking as someone who had ancestors who were driven from their homes fleeing the Reich, speaking as someone who had my great-grandfather fought in World War II and liberated the Philippines from the Axis rule, Nazism as an ideology is a very dangerous force to be playing with. Yeah. Let's not forget the brown shirts, which were the saplings for what became the Third Reich, were meant initially with derision and a lack of seriousness. And I think understanding that history tends in that direction of allowing things that we ignore to come back and bite us in the ass, I think that stamping out any aspect of Nazi propaganda, whether or not it is something as seemingly small and insignificant as someone training his dog to utilize those symbols and make those very strange concept. But the fact of the matter is that even in doing that and even in making light of those events, you create an environment where exhibiting those behaviors is now safe. Yeah. And the line begins to blur between where is the humor, so to speak, which I have trouble finding humor in any of this, but where is the humor, so to speak, and where is actual action being taken? And I think the government of Switzerland has done a phenomenal job of quickly moving and swiftly taking action on this issue to ensure that ideology never again takes hold. And we're talking about the deaths of millions of people.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you there that it's not, Nazi ideology is not like a safe thing, and it's not something to be taken lightly. That being said, I don't think this guy was trying to promote Nazi propaganda. I don't think he was trying to do any of these things, because even in the video he said, I'm gonna make my pug into, again, such a weird concept, my guy. I'm gonna make my pug into the least adorable thing I can think of, a Nazi. And throughout the thing, it's not like he's trying to make light of any of it or make any of it good. He was, in his mind, making a joke out of it. And I don't know, I'm personally of the belief that like jokes usually border into things that are taboo, and that's just how it is. Yeah. I don't know, I don't feel like he was trying. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you, because I don't think he was purposely trying to promote Nazism. With this form of a satirical joke almost, I think he was just trying to piss off his girlfriend, honestly. I mean, I don't think he intended... I'd be pissed off if my dog was not.
Can
you imagine that if you come home and your dog's doing the salute?
And that may very well be true, but I think it's important in dealing with the issue to understand that a lack of severity in utilizing these symbols and these actions does still perpetuate an ideology and perpetuate the actions of a group that, again, participated in one of the largest mass genocides in history. And while there's understandably humor in pissing off your girlfriend, whatever, I certainly understand that. The fact of the matter is that there's territory that you just don't drift into.
No,
and utilizing those symbols for that purpose, I think still ventures into territory that societally, culturally, in any respect, in any place, we should avoid.
Mm-hmm. Now, in your opinion, do you think the severity of his crimes were subject to actual imprisonment, or do you think that it should have just been, because I agree with you, I mean, I don't think it should be thrown around freely, the idea of Nazism, you know?
Sure.
But I think the fact that he's imprisoned for this and he's found guilty, do you think that there should have just been like a fine, you know, just to reprimand him a little bit?
That's an interesting question to pose, and there's a lot of variables there. What I will say is that the government taking severe action against this sort of thing sends a distinct message that that country as a society is not going to tolerate that sort of messaging. Right. And so while he may have sort of had to take this one on the chin, for the sake of that, and while perhaps the severity of the crime did not match the punishment, I think it's important to remember that you cannot be too careful in ensuring that this ideology does not take hold.
I kind of think it almost as the opposite, because I feel like when you have something like this where it was a guy he was making a joke, and now we're gonna just come out and like be like, no, absolutely not. I feel like people who think there isn't racism and people who think there isn't Nazism still very much alive today, it just kind of creates it in their mind. It's the same reason why a lot of times people are like, is this really the battle you want to fight for things like feminism and Black Lives Matter, all those different movements, when they have like smaller issues that they get really like honed in on and people are like, this isn't what we should be focusing on, there's a grander problem here. I feel like it's the same situation, because if now someone who lived where he lives, who didn't think Nazis are really that big of a problem anymore, and now in the mass media we're talking about a guy trained his pug to salute Hitler, and now they see that as this is the ultimate problem, I think they're going to take it as a joke where we're just being too PC and we're not allowing a conversation to be there, I suppose.
And there is an element of, as I understand, rebellion there and that sort of thing, and in people taking a look at what's happened and saying, hey, that's not right, we should be allowed to do this. Now, taking the victimization onto themselves, saying we're being attacked and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think more strongly, these actions and his sentencing are going to read as a warning, and I think the next guy who takes a step to wander around a park wearing a Nazi flag and screaming racial slurs, which has been known to happen recently in a variety of places, that guy is going to think twice before he takes that action. Again, frankly, I think the United States of America could take a cue from these sorts of incidences and how they've been handled in tamping down our own inflammation right now and our own issues with neo-Nazism coming to the forefront again.
I agree. Yeah. So that being said, where do you draw the line? Because this was a joke, and there is satire there to an extent. I get how you can call it a joke. I don't know what he was going for satire. I think that was kind of a reach. But in terms of humor and satire, where do you draw the line on this is something we can make jokes about, this is something we can make light of, and this is just no-go, this is hate speech?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
I mean, just going off of what we have here in the U.S., because I have never lived in Scotland.
Switzerland.
Something
like that. It's Europe, man. He lives in Scotland. Who's to say?
So only going off of what I know here in America, I know that no matter how offensive your speech may be, hate speech is not a criminal charge.
Yeah.
Now,
it has to
I
get to the point
agree
of
that
harassment in the US.
I agree that to some extent that there should be some punishment, because, I mean, some things are just you know they shouldn't be said, and you go ahead and do them anyway. But I mean, it's really hard to try and draw on a line, you know. Because for this case exactly, he's purposely trying to make a joke. Now, was that joke over the line? Yeah, probably. But I do think that he's just being criticized quite a bit, even though he was in the wrong.
I think, and to some extent I see what you're saying, I think this is an issue of environment and platform. If this man was a stand-up comedian and he was known to do bits involving whatever he wants to call satire or criticism or whatever of Nazism, and that was his audience base and they were entering a private arena to do that sort of thing, that's fine. What we're talking about is an average private citizen not necessarily venturing in this territory for any high artistic purpose or anything like that, and posting these incidences, these events on a mass-mediated platform, which is effectively shouting it out to the whole world.
Right.
There's no pretense, there's no caveat, there's nothing to sort of give this a proper platform and a proper environment to be what it is if he wants it to be satire or he wants it to be a joke. So I think in this case what we're talking about where we draw the line is this guy operating as an artist or as a comedian or something like that on a specific platform where these things can be appreciated for their intention? Or has he simply shouted this into the void and let it be a statement for all people to receive and interpret and to be part of the cultural aspect? And I think that's where the breach really occurred.
I'm curious to see whether or not this was the first incident that he's done something like this, because you know the police and citizens have only focused on this particular incident. So I'm curious to see if this is like a duplicated thing where he's done this in the past, but
I tried to look into it. A lot of his stuff is like, he's trying to stay out of the limelight for obvious reasons, but it seems like this was like the only thing. And like he said, it wasn't like he's like known for comedy or satire. He was making what he attempted to be a joke.
Right.
But on the where is satire, where is jokes thing, I'm one of those people who really think that the best way to deal with an issue is through humor. I think it's just the best way to deal with everything. It's how I deal with being a complete failure in my life. And I accept that. You know, humor will get you there. But I think when you take away the ability to just talk about things in a joking manner or any other way, I think it causes problems and it creates a taboo. And like I said earlier, it creates this like small little like pod of people who are like, we're not allowed to talk about this, we're being dismissed by the government. They hold these views and they get bitter and they get harsh. And so I think the best way to talk about things is through humor and bringing them up this way. Would I have made a video where I made a pug a Nazi? No, but that was this guy's version of dealing with his issue. Dealing with an issue in a way. It was his version of humor. It was his version of at least trying to make a joke out of Nazis, which Nazis are jokes because you're all awful. Sorry, not biased at all. But yeah, and so I personally am the belief that we really shouldn't turn, unless like the joke is like, haha, Jews aren't people, let's kill them all. Like, I don't think...
Well, but that certainly is the joke, I mean, to an extent, and ordinarily I would agree with you but about dealing things in a joking manner, but I think there's a way to talk about these things and not to shut down the conversation without, while still giving this issue the proper severity and the proper respect that it deserves.
That's fair.
Educate your younger generations. Educate your older generations, remember your history, have discussions about the destructive impact of these ideologies and how we can eradicate them sufficiently without yet still being disrespectful to the incidences that occurred because of it.
That's fair. But any closing thoughts on this story? Anything at all?
I think we pretty much laid it out on the table there.
Mine's Nazis, you know. Like, seriously though, it's like, if I could have worn my Nazi shirt today, I would have, but then they would have had to blur the whole thing. You guys don't want that. But, it's very, the Nazis is over. It's very 1984-esque. And you know what else happened in 1984? George Orwell's Big Brother. And you know what's kind of like Big Brother? Facebook. And you know what Facebook just did? They got in trouble for Cambridge Analytica. It all goes together.
That was a reach.
Wow. Putting you on my show has been a mistake.
Had been a stretch there.
But wouldn't you like to host sometimes? God. So Facebook's in trouble because they leaked all of your information in a way, and be sad about it. No.
Surprise.
Honestly. So Facebook they sell information. That's not an unknown thing. Facebook sells your information to people who most of the time want to use it for advertisements. It's why when I go on Facebook, I see a bunch of ads for like Flash merchandise. It's how it is. So what's not so great is they sold a lot of users' information to a company called Cambridge Analytica, and even though Facebook didn't know what they were going to use it for, they were using it improperly. A lot of it was being used to push propaganda onto people, specifically some of it's being tied back to the Russians' involvement in the 2016 election. And so, people aren't really happy with Facebook because, no one wants Russian bots. So what are your guys' thoughts on just the case itself initially?
I think it's just carelessness. I mean, on Facebook's part. I mean, whenever you're dealing with people's information, you always have to be careful with it. I mean, that's the point. You go on Facebook and you have your own security measures that you can use. But then, I mean, it's to a point where Facebook is in control of everything. I mean, you're on their site. And for them to just kind of hand out information to a source where they may not have been completely trustworthy is just careless.
They were a little sketchy.
Yeah.
Facebook didn't mind, though. Mark Zuckerberg's got to make those G's, man.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, surprise, which it's not. I mean, this is no surprise. Facebook has been involved in matters like this, and there's been a lot of speculation around their activity with people's private information for a long time. There have been incidences and leaks and all of that sort of thing. But my issue with this is, while it's heinous, while it's abhorrent, Facebook should not be under the table handing people's information to advertisers or to foreign governments or whatever. There is a point where I think we societally are paying the price for what has become a phenomenon of self-obsession. I mean, it's true. Facebook and social media, as it's occurred, is a platform for people's vanity to take hold. And so when you put all of your private information, every single solitary throwaway thought that flies into your head, and you put it out there on a mass-mediated platform where anyone can have access to it, where Facebook ultimately now owns the content you've produced, you're paying the price. You're putting your faith in them that as a massive American mega corporation, they're going to do right by you, which traditionally has never been the case.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is at all a surprise is sort of troubling, and the fact that it's occurred is sort of a no-brainer. This is the culmination of social media, of the information age, up until this point. And I'm sure we're going to start seeing things like this happening all over the place, as now that there's been a big break with Facebook. We're going to look at Twitter, we're going to look at Instagram, probably even Snapchat, and we're going to start taking a look at, are the promises we've been made about the security of our information being upheld, or are they every single last one being broken? And it seems that Facebook is a bad omen for any information social media company going forward.
I love how drastically political you make this subject. It's one of my favorite things about you. No, I'm kind of with you to an extent, because on the one hand, a lot of people don't know, and that's kind of what's come out of this, is a lot of people found out that you agree. You are letting Facebook, when you sign those terms and conditions that you don't read, you are saying, yes, Facebook, you can sell my information. And so, yes, Facebook should probably be a little more cautious of who they sell it to, but you're letting them sell it. You are the product here. Like, you make yourself a product.
Can you imagine if every single user on Facebook had like a share or something to try and make a decision?
We all become stocks.
And effectively, I mean, but that is the way that Facebook is using this. They're utilizing their user base as currency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And see, while I see that as a problem, I can't be mad at Facebook because a lot of people are mad at Facebook. I'm not super pleased with Cambridge Analytica using it to like push propaganda and other things that probably shouldn't be doing. But I'm not super mad at Facebook, which a lot of people are, which that goes into Mark Zuckerberg made a statement about it, and the statement was essentially like, oh, I'm sorry you guys are upset, whatever. Hold on, I have to count a couple billion real quick, but if you guys want me to talk in front of Congress, I will. He brushed it off. A lot of people were a little offended with how whatever he was about the whole situation.
As he lights a cigar with a $100 bill.
Yeah, yeah, like, and so I kind of get where he's coming from, where he like, you guys signed up for this, our bad, I guess. Probably won't happen in the future as far as you know. So like, where do you stand on Mark Zuckerberg's response to all this?
I mean, I kind of understand where he's coming from because going back to, if we think about how, in essence, Facebook's users are almost like stockholders.
Right.
You know? I mean, if you make an investment, you should expect to lose an investment, you know? Like,
Yeah.
So the way I think he's looking at it is, we made a mistake, but you guys were also kind of on board with this. Like with you had mentioned the terms and conditions, because we've all agreed to them. You know?
We didn't read them, but we agreed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's completely unsurprising. I mean, again, he's sitting on stacks of hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, is he really going to? There's nothing Mark Zuckerberg is required to do here. I mean, people aren't going to drastically stop using Facebook in
Yeah,
droves.
and that's my thing, is like, Mark Zuckerberg's job is not to make sure you're having just the best of times on Facebook.
Right. Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg is trying to make a profit, and social media companies don't make profits from you using it. Like, some people think that's how it is, but no, they make profit through ads and through selling your information.
Yeah.
And so, like, he's doing everything he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
Like, it was to be expected.
I mean, it's the waiver you sign when you click through those terms and conditions, when you create an account on Facebook, and you should presume anyway, I mean, that's going to happen whether it's in the terms and conditions or not. And I mean, this has been kind of, like I said, this has been coming down the pipe for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's been issue. Pretty much, I feel like about once a year, people they hear some story about Facebook selling your information, and people are like, they can't do that. But yeah, they actually can.
Yeah.
They do. They all do. But the one thing that like Facebook's gotten in trouble the most for, that it's not 100% confirmed yet, but it's seeming that way, is a lot of people catching slack for Facebook may have known a bit before it broke that Cambridge Analytica was the issue here. It's looking like they had at least a reasonable suspicion, but because they don't want to come out and be like, hi, we leaked all your information to maybe Russia, who knows, they didn't necessarily come out and say anything. So I put a little more fault on them for that, because like, if there is something illegal going on, we'd probably like to know. But then that being said, Facebook's argument is, hey, we just give them the information, we don't do anything with it. So where is that weird gray area for you?
well,
Life's depressing, huh?
let's see. So I don't know.
This is my favorite segment of Pop Tab segment.
If Facebook had any inkling of an idea, I mean, they're looking at it as an investment.
Yeah.
You know, so, and like I had mentioned before, if you're willing to make an investment, you're willing to lose money. And in this instance, it wasn't maybe just money, but it was also people's information, and now you're in the public's eye, so you might be, you know, but
their stock dropped heavy after all this came out.
I'm sure it did. But knowing Facebook and, you know, the giant it is, it will probably bounce right back.
Yeah.
I mean,
a handsome, lankishly tall boy that I know, Michael Robb, the other day, said that unless we get a new Facebook, Facebook's not going anywhere, and I kind of agree with that.
Right. And my question is, especially if there's suspicion that these things have been being delivered to Russia, how does that then tie into the fake news epidemic or whatever buzzword they're throwing around CNN to paint it now? Is this tied into that? Is this evidence more evidence of those things going on? Does this also, in a sense, then prove that Facebook knowingly shared that information? I know that there's been speculation about Russian investment in Facebook and that sort of thing. So my question, what I'm looking at least personally going forward, is where does that tie in to the goings-on in the, quote, fake news cycle, and in turn, in a lot of ways, in the U.S. election, and U.S. elections going forward. Talk about, there's already meddling going on in the 2018 congressional elections.
Can we get a break, please? I'm so tired. Russia, leave us alone.
I think it's
our
gonna
bad in the
become
Cold
new
War.
norm.
Sorry.
Right. I mean, and this sort of mass-mediated globalization is certainly a part of that. And I think Hunter's absolutely right. I think we're going to see a lot more of it.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of worried that in the same thing that you brought up earlier, in that just now every social media company is going to be like, oh, we also sold your information to Russia. Like, RB, but look at this fun new filter you can put on.
Right.
Like, you can't really make up for that when you're just a social media company.
Hey, we lost this information, but it got us a lot of money, so we can make some more features for you
There
guys.
you go. As long as I get something fun out of it, you can sell my information to whoever. Also, Zuckerberg, that sounds vaguely Russian. I'd buy it.
Right.
Maybe.
Look, I just want the Snapchat filter that puts me shirtless on the back of a bear, like that photo of Putin. Did you guys?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I know what you're going for now. but-
Yeah, I definitely. That's what I want out of this whole thing. If I get that, I'm happy. I don't know about you guys.
The only time I'll get really suspicious is if a filter is just, it puts us in Russian military uniform. And it's just yay, yay Putin. I think that's a little sketchy, but any closing thoughts on this, or Mark Zuckerberg, how do you feel about him? I think he looks a little scary. He reminds me of Lex Luthor, and that freaks me out. So,
Well, Eisenberg, I mean, they've got that in common.
Oh my gosh.
Jesse Eisenberg fucked up.
Yeah, he should have gone Marvel, man.
Yeah,
They all should have. But, so, you know what else is dead, much like that Justice League movie?
Uh-oh.
Snapchat.
Uh-oh.
Don't you
Very
mock
subtle,
me, Keaney.
Very subtle.
Snapchat is what I'm going to talk about, because Snapchat's also in trouble. Social media's having a bad day, kids. Was there a good day, though? So, Snapchat recently had an ad for a game called Would You Rather. And that's a fun game. We've all played it before, but this particular app that does it had an ad. And the Would You Rather was, would you rather punch Chris Brown or slap Rihanna? And that's a little because back in 2009, Rihanna and Chris Brown had a domestic abuse case where he kind of kicked the crap out of Rihanna and pled guilty to it. So Rihanna quickly took to her Instagram stories to be like, hey man, literally what the fuck? She didn't say that, no. She just said that it was very insensitive, specifically to people who are still experiencing domestic violence, and that it was just a really big mess up for Snapchat. So what are your initial thoughts on that?
I mean, here's the thing. Again, collective mob mentality, self-obsession, all of the things that work in social media lead to instances like this, where we have, and as I understand, it was a third-party game that was advertising on Snapchat.
Yes, but Snapchat did admit, they were like, it went through our review process.
Right.
Our bad.
So, I mean, but we have now games that are appealing to a collective dissonance, shall we say, in encouraging users to partake in a sort of mob mentality where we're going to argue back and forth now about inflicting violence on public figures because there's that feeling of detachment, because there's a separation, it becomes a fantasy. You know, it's when you're talking about, slapping Rihanna or punching Chris Brown. We're talking about cartoon characters at this point because the environment social media creates makes it so. The fact that Snapchat allowed that ad to go through their review process and someone looked at that and said, you know what, I think that'll connect with our base is
shocking.
It's shocking,
So
but it's disgusting, frankly. And putting specifically Rihanna, who, let's be clear, is a victim of domestic abuse, in that position to have to, again, after almost a decade.
Yeah, she has to relive all that.
Yeah, she has to not only relive all that, but now, again, advocate for herself and on behalf of domestic violence victims everywhere to call out a mega corporation allowing this sort of content through. I think also, though, someone needs to look carefully at the company that put that ad through. And
someone tells me that game's not going to do super well.
Yeah, I mean, but again, like, how there's so many steps for something like that to go through a review process to end up on the platform.
Someone animated that ad.
Right.
Somebody put that
what data mining techniques were used to show it to which users? When and then ad revenue. Where did it go? How was it? What percentages were taken by Snapchat? What percentages were taken by the company? There's a lot of questions and probably plenty of blame to go around. I think the larger issue to look at is why does content like this seem to, and this is not the first instance of something like this, why does content like this seem to regularly thrive on social media platforms?
I think the reason for that is just because it's attention grabbing.
Yeah.
I mean, have you played the game Would You Rather before?
Not the app, but I played like the game.
Okay. I know that it pretty much thrives off of risque and just bad comparisons.
Poor humor, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I will agree that it was probably not the best to put that specific comparison on the commercial for Snapchat. But at the same time, like, that game, with what it's become known for, with what I just mentioned, it's almost like false advertising. If they're advertising something that's just like, what do you like better, cats or dogs?
That's
and then
boring,
there's that attention-grabbing device where they're pulling up a very controversial issue that they know is going to get attention, and I'm curious to see. Why did Snapchat think, oh yeah, that's a good idea?
My question about that, though, is again, like, in specifically a mass-mediated environment in social media on Snapchat, why does that appeal? There are so many other jokes that could have been tasteless, poor humor they could have made. Why does
domestic abuse?
Why does a domestic abuse case?
I think actually, I'm going to change my opinion a little because I was going to say I don't think this app would do very well, but I actually think it probably will because specifically right now, kind of going off that, we have this like mass cry for I hate political correctness because being nice to people hurts my feelings. And like I think there's probably a decent niche market there who would see an ad like that, especially after this controversy blew up, and they'd be like, oh yeah, someone's not afraid to just ask a stupid question, someone's not afraid to not be PC. And so probably, like you said, it's shocking. And so when you're like looking through and you're like, oh, that's weird, I'm a little confused why that's on my timeline.
Yeah.
And then if you're one of those niche people who are like, I hate PC, suddenly you're interested. And I think violence is something that immediately grabs attention. We, at this point, because like every app, for some reason, uses some female celebrity that has nothing to do with the game to like advertise, because sex has almost stopped selling. Like sex is so just like ingrained in us that we're used to it. So I think violence.
What is the one, it's some game for your phone. It's
Natalie Dormer Game of War.
Either that or Kate Upton. One of the
Kate Upton. It was some real-time strategy game.
Yeah,
had absolutely
like
nothing to do with it.
Because sex sells, and I think it's starting to stop selling. So I hope.
So we're gonna start selling domestic violence.
Yeah,
there you go.
Wonderful.
That's a good recipe. Good recipe for success right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Snapchat did come out and apologize, and they said the ad was disgusting and it never should have gotten through their review process and all that jazz. but it did, and I doubt one person put that through.
I was gonna say, what's the team of reviewers that just kind of laughing to themselves like?
They're just like,
there's not just one guy eating Cheetos in his apartment, being like, not that one. It's
that one shows gay stuff now.
Yeah, there's a review board. So at what point is an apology not good enough when the immense system that you have in place still lets that through? At what point does Snapchat just have to take the responsibility? And it looks like they are.
They are. A lot of people are unhappy, and their stock dropped about 4 points, and that translates to about $800 million. So now that is coupled with the fact that they just recently had a god-awful update. As someone who has it and hates the update, you're bad. Feel bad, Snapchat. I haven't deleted it because I'm bad at deleting apps. Feel bad, I don't use it anymore. Kylie Jenner also, because she's a celebrity, she jumped in and she was like, hey, I think this update's awful, I hardly use it anymore, and they immediately saw a drop. And then after Rihanna did this, they saw an even bigger drop. So that does bring forth the question, do you guys think Snapchat is dead? Gasp.
It's the company that's failed to turn a profit so far?
Yeah. I do think that it's kind of going to be like Facebook until there's another better application that you can use instead of it. I think it's going to stay around. Maybe it might not be as popular as before with this recent drop-offs that it's had, but I don't think it's going to go away for a while.
Yeah, it is fairly widely used, despite all jokes aside about the fact that they haven't turned a profit.
Spectacles, man. You guys tried that.
Yeah, they really did. And you do have Instagram stories. You do have these elements that have been brought up, sort of blatantly stolen from Snapchat and brought into other social media platforms. Yeah. Is Snapchat dead? Not yet, but I think they're in danger. Again, you're talking about a company that hasn't turned a profit. You're talking about several.
They don't have Russian bots helping.
They have several instances of losing their user base to various incidences, from Kylie Jenner deciding she doesn't like the app anymore and her being a tastemaker hurting them, to blatantly taking advantage of a domestic abuse victim. They're in trouble. They need to watch themselves on what their next move is and what their response is to this. Obviously, Rihanna wasn't satisfied with the apology. I don't blame her one bit. I certainly wouldn't be if I was in her position. Snapchat has to do more, not only in cases like this, but about its user base's dissatisfaction. Just from a general perspective, they're certainly in trouble.
Yeah, I do agree. Snapchat needs to tread very carefully, because if they have another big blunder like this, I really do think that they're going to run into some trouble where they're going to see their stock fall massively.
I personally think that, like you said, it's the same thing with Facebook where you can't really replace something until there's something better. I think they are already in that zone where Facebook has Facebook stories, Instagram has Instagram stories, which is the exact same thing. Instagram was like, no, it's not. It's the exact same thing. Like
Facebook even, right?
Yeah. So like everything other than Twitter pretty much can do what Snapchat does, and so I think that might be, with all that they've been because their stocks started dropping, user base started declining when Instagram started doing Instagram stories, and so I think that honestly with all this, they're not going to stick around. No one needs Snapchat. I know very few people who Snapchat's their favorite social media platform. Like, I think they're a little dead in the water, kids. But that being said, what are your thoughts on this or anything else we talked about today?
Well, did you hear about the official that just got elected in Illinois? Going back to the first story we had.
Nazi.
They elected a Nazi. He is a Holocaust denier, and
no one else was running, to be fair.
No one else was running.
Which doesn't that just say it all?
Yeah.
You couldn't find one.
Just
honestly,
one.
Grab like a pizza boy off the street and be like, "You want to be?"
Yeah. Just walk into any daycare center and be like, "Kid, you're up." Anything. They couldn't find anyone to.
Hi, Ellen. Right. I'm Matthew Yapp, experience in political science. Just saying, if you want to do a re-election, I'm your guy. No experience, but. Just saying, Illinois. But yeah, the Nazis.
Yeah. Okay.
America 2018, man.
Right.
My closing thoughts is Nazi. Like, Just in general, just Nazis. Maybe Mark Zuckerberg, but I think he's doing fine. He's just doing his job, and probably Snapchat.
Zuckerberg's gonna do what Zuckerberg's gonna do.
Honestly. Isn't that just life? Thank you guys so much for being here today.
No problem.
I've been your host, Matthew Yapp, and joining me was
Hunter Weiss.
and
Connor Keaney.
thank you guys so much. I stand by, like, when you fucking shave your head, it looks fucking good.
Yeah, whenever I had mine short, it's like, man, I need a haircut all the time.
Yeah.
But
No.
Now you look luscious.
That's the direction I'm going. I'm going it all out.
yeah.
I'm gonna, yep.
Is that what you fucking shaved
Except
in?
he is like a luscious man. I'm gonna look like mangy Kurt Cobain.
You kind of do.